So I just want to take a moment as well to honor you. And I also feel a sense of duty to my own son. Every time I look at him, I think, we have a constant reproduction of youth. We're constantly introducing children into the world. And in the same way that generations before us had a duty to clean up messes, put things in order for our generation, it becomes very real when you have your own child as well. And you look at them and you feel an onus to leave a better world behind. My son's name is Louis, by the way. He's an angel, if you've ever gotten to meet him. And we named Louis after my father, Louis Watum, who to me is, in all definitions, an African hero. And I want to begin my presentation talking about that journey. See, my father Louis was born with a little bit of privilege. His father was part of the first democratic government of the DRC. He was a minister of defense of the country. Built the country's military from scratch, bought the first fighter jets for the country. But as African politics and instability has it, you tend to fall from grace very quickly when you take those roles. Especially when a dictator named Mobutu takes power. And you get relegated. He got relegated from being a minister to being an ambassador, an exiled ambassador, sent off on a slightly humiliating appointment, actually, into a war zone in another country far away while a case was corroborated against him at home. Enough time for the new government to come up with a corrupt case, bring him back home, and disgrace him, have him arrested, put into the dungeons beneath Kinshasa that no one knows exists as a political prisoner. In the process, that tore my father's family apart. He went from being the son of a minister to the son of an exiled ambassador to the son of a political prisoner, losing everything he had in the process, and the privilege that he once knew was no more. But what he did have was education. And that's the first pillar here. Education is extremely important because the testimony is that he was able to push forward and go ahead and earn a qualification in chemical engineering and get some good work for himself in spite of the circumstances in his country. Until one day, resource warfare, which is an issue that Africa deals with, led to rebels attacking them. And he was one of the few who were fortunate enough, because of their tribe, to be excused from having buckets of acid poured over them. Run as far and as fast as you can, or else this is for you. He ended up running away to South Africa. And from there, his education, his resolve, his belief in the African dream, the fact that opportunity does exist in this continent, drove him enough to the point that literally 2 days ago it was announced that the same Louis is now the Minister of Industries and SMEs of the DRC. I'm not telling you that for vanity. I'm telling you that because Louis today has duties. And I believe that every single person in this room has duties. At the very least, we are educated. It is not by chance that we are in this room. We are trusted, we are capable, we have authorities, capabilities. And it would be a waste if, unlike Louis, we didn't seize those opportunities. It would also be a waste if we didn't realize that the majority of Africans aren't so fortunate as we are. I think of refugees like my own folks who don't make the cut. People who are internally displaced, stuck in war-torn environments, confronted by poverty. And in the DRC, resource warfare is insane. It hasn't stopped until today. We hear the stories of what's going on in the east. And in spite of that, and in spite of the mischance that exists, the same DRC has enough reserves to electrify the entire Africa if they were transformed correctly. I can't imagine being the 5th hungriest economy in the world while having the largest volume of arable land. By population, we have the worst food crisis known to man. Beggars sitting on a fortune. And as for the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, 17 out of the 20 environmental vulnerability hotspots are here. The 5 best fed nations in Africa classify as moderately hungry. The rest of us are all either seriously, alarmingly, or very alarmingly hungry. What kind of rhetoric is this? This is paralysis. Just last night I was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs with one of our panelists. Business 101. At the base of that pyramid is your physiological needs. You cannot eat, you cannot drink, then you cannot be. And with almost 1 billion people on this continent, either poor, hungry, or environmentally vulnerable, resolution is $1 trillion business. Let me break that down. Irrigation, tools, inputs, processing, storage, logistics, market access costs Africa an infrastructure development gap of $500 billion annually. In terms of manufacturing value addition, in 2017, our best performing economy, South Africa, ranked in the 40th percentile of the world. Today, Nigeria, who was second place at the time, is now first place, and they rank 33rd in the world. DRC, I'm just going to throw in there, is third on the list today, ranking 60th. There's a little bit of improvement there, but let me tell you what's not improving. The rate of investment into solutions that can help us capture value. To put into context, in 2017, 0.7% of the world's investments flowed into Africa. Today, that 0.7 has shrunk to 0.4%. We are not doing a better job. We're doing a worse job. The math isn't mathing. The value isn't adding. And it's time to wise up. It's time to rise up. We have DFIs in the house, capacity builders, and me. I'm not going to die a scorned man. And these are not my words, but the words of Plato. What surprises me most about humankind is that we get bored of our childhood. We rush to grow up and long to be children again. That we lose our health to make money and then lose our money to restore our health. That by thinking anxiously about the future, we forget the present, such that we live in neither the present nor the future. That we live as if we were never going to die, and die as though we never lived. My dear colleagues, let us choose life. Let us live so that we do what we are blessed to be able to do. There is a calling on each and every one of us, no matter what your background is, no matter who your employer is. You're in a position that others aren't. And it would be regrettable if at the end of your lives you looked back and said, in spite of meetings like this, conversations like this being desk to desk, shoulder to shoulder, face to face with people who have financial arsenals that could revolutionize the sector. And you knew what the problems were, but you didn't ideate, you didn't challenge, you didn't try. It would be a shame. So what I propose and what I encourage and what I hope to achieve today through these fruitful conversations is to arrive to a point where we have a framework that paints a new picture, that makes a new story, that allows us to imagine how resources, multi-billion-dollar funds, the same funds we've observed speak over the last 3 days on excellent panels, with very intelligent managers in front of them. But how do we mobilize? How do we purpose? How do we redirect? How do we invest so that this same population we talk about, this same sector from which over 80% of Africans derive their livelihoods, the same value chain that forces us to remain sub 30 in terms of value adding around the world, the same sector whose underperformance keeps us stuck in a poverty cycle. Investments to transform, to take us forward, to shift us and propel us into a new dimension. This is where we want to be. With that, I'm happy to introduce our panel. We're joined, first of all, by Mohan Vivekanandan. And you're welcome to take the stage. He's a group executive at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. If you've seen his bio on our site, you'd know that they have objectives to unlock over $8 billion in infrastructure development annually. We're joined by David Ogiga from Sote Hub. He is also a board member of AfriLabs, representing East Africa. He has already empowered over 18,000 agricultural businesses in this country alone. We're joined by Indehwa Anangwe, working at Nature Finance. They've got excellent solutions and products to do with biocredits. And we're joined by Steve Carver, founder, director at You Can Company, doing all kinds of incredible work in South Africa and around the continent, actually. I will start this panel off with Mohan. Over the last few days, we've seen incredible conversations, DBSA, leading institutions, Afreximbank, a lot of alliances. And in every single panel that we've observed, I've had the same question. Why is it that the most financialized, powerful institutions of our continent are unable to invest directly into this sector? Am I accurate to ask that question? Have I misunderstood?
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be able to engage, around these kinds of topics. So again, my name is Mohan Vivekanandan. I'm with the Development Bank of Southern Africa. We're based in Johannesburg, and we are a national development bank, meaning we're fully owned by the South African government. But our mandate is to promote sustainable infrastructure throughout the African continent. And currently we operate in about 20 countries on the continent, predominantly focused still on South Africa. That's where about 2/3 of our funding activities go to. Now, coming to your question, Mark, I think what you're trying to figure out is is I think there is an element of a paradox, right? Which is, in a lot of these events, there's a comment that gets made that there's actually a lot of capital out there. And what it's looking for are good quality projects, good quality investments, good quality meaning you're going to have a development impact, but also make an adequate risk-adjusted return. The challenge, though, within that capital, you'll find is that a lot of that capital is actually quite risk-averse. And so what they're looking for are very structured transactions or well-performing companies actually to deploy that capital into. And everybody is looking for someone else to take that early stage risk. And so that early stage risk capital is actually quite scarce, especially in the African continent. We don't have the same kind of venture capital type ecosystems that exist in some other parts of the world. And hence, that's why, I think we're having this discussion and we're saying that not a lot of this capital exists. I suppose, it's an issue in many different places. It's not just unique to South Africa or the African continent, but I think more so here. And then, so coming to your question, we as the DBSA, we're actually, as much as we're a development bank, the key element there is the bank. And so typically banks provide lending, right? They don't take equity investments as much. And if you look at where we get our capital, if you trace that, where somebody gets their capital from, it'll give you a view of what their behavior is going to be. Because so in our case, we have to borrow from the capital markets. We've got bonds that are traded in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We borrow from institutional investors in South Africa. We borrow from banks as well for shorter tenor capital. So what that means is, we're deploying their capital. We need to make sure we make more, because we have to repay that with interest. So what that does is it does drive a certain type of behavior. Now, what we are able to do is we're able to allocate a small portion of our capital, of our funding every year towards higher risk activities. And maybe, we can have a further discussion later on around what are some of those products, what are some of the examples of higher risk activities. But the key point is, that's less than 10%. So last year we did roughly about $1 billion worth of financing, right? Of that, definitely less than 10% is, I would say, early stage, high risk type investments.
Thank you very much. And on the topic of diversifying into higher risk, I want to have a chat with Inekwa very quickly, because you're developing alternative products, for lack of a better word. Can you tell us a bit about biocredits, and maybe also just speak to this, because I'm after a framework here. What would happen if the DBSAs of the world financed the development of your products? And then through that, then we can open up additional sort of streams for riskier assets, riskier investments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And I'll just mention Nature Finance is a pretty new organization, Swiss-based non-profit organization with a reach in 12 countries. And what Mark is mentioning on biocredits is just one of the initiatives that we're trying to take under the core pillars of the work that we do. So that falls under the pillar of work that we call nature markets. And the reason why this is very interesting and relevant at this time, especially for the African continent, we are seeing a lot of push around nature commodities, nature services beginning to be traded on the global economy. Goes back to exactly what Mark was saying. And tied to this is a fact that we all know but have been hush-hushing for quite a long time. 100% of the global economy is dependent on 100% on nature. And so we are coming into this space, specifically under nature markets, to try and identify some of those solutions, not really to essentially create them, but come in at the market level, because these markets are starting to develop, but then there are no frameworks to allow people like DBSA to come in and engage with those markets. There are no standards. We are not seeing enough engagement from people like potential investors who are in the room, and so we come in and try to bridge that gap because we engage directly with some of the developers. We just completed an assessment on the African continent to try and map out who's doing what within that biocredit space, and we are putting out recommendations right from the policy level all the way to the market level in terms of what are the things we are hearing from the traders as well as the developers in terms of how to make the market accessible, but also to make sure that we are getting the right pricing out of these biocredits. And biocredits is a term that is still even to be properly defined, but we are looking at it as a tradable credit or a tradable unit that is linked to nature. So it's a new space. There's a lot of room to engage in it. But for people like DBSA to come in, we have to first of all have the market in place. We have to engage with the government so that they have policies that guide the people who are trading in this place. And what we've been observing is that there's a lot of inflow, especially from outside, coming to our local communities or the local developers and offering them way much below than the real price of what they would take back to the market. So it goes back to everything from what you're talking about, what's happening in DRC, what's happening in the tea sector, and we are trying to bridge that gap right at this moment when the market is developing.
Thank you very much. I understand, and we'll revisit this in a second. I'm interested in taking up conversations on the bio credits, carbon credits, additional nature finance products. And I don't just mean nature finance, your organization, but in terms of nature financing. And maybe we can extrapolate a little bit on how DFIs can continue to look that way. And then maybe Mohan, you'll make a mental note to comment on whether or not you are diversifying in that direction. Now, I have a question that applies to both Steve and David. You gentlemen are very much in the empowerment ecosystem. You work on the ground every single day with locals who comprise this demographic we're focused on today. The term risky investment is often used as an umbrella to describe an aversion for capital to flow into projects very much like the ones you're involved in. Are they risky based on what you've seen? What kind of turnarounds, impacts, developments are you seeing? What is the recipe for success? And do you imagine a way that this can translate beyond the conventional risk profile that DFI would consider them to apply within?
It is about empowerment. And what I find quite interesting is that I think that a lot of this is about the formal market, but Africa really thrives in the informal market, and a lot of people are calling it the greater market. And so there is a transition of a massive challenge, and we've got three areas. The first area we have right the way across Africa is in fact we have an educational crisis. There is no subject at school called how to make money. We do everything else other than that, and every parent wants their children to be financially secure. They want them to be good assets and citizens that are healthy, enterprising, paying tax, etc. And so we've got to focus on what's the risk of not getting that right. And so very often there is huge white elephants in conversations like this that doesn't bring in the greater market or the informal market. In fact, they're not here, and they're never invited to events like this. And so what you see is you suddenly start to see that there is incredible positive deviance right the way across our continent. There are women making businesses out of literally nothing, and what we've got to do is we've got to start to focus on what are the pathways to get enterprising Africans to step up and step up again and really grow the muscle. Because most people talk about being a fire engine and they say, we are the fire engine for financial impact and we're the fire. But when there is a fire, they hide their fire engine. And so I think very often we've got to start looking at where are the bubble up solutions, not the trickle down solutions. And I get so excited because in every country across Africa, we have millions of entrepreneurs and bubble up entrepreneurs that have got unbelievable innovation. They've got unbelievable ways. It's how do we light that fire into de-risking it through a different lens. And I think that's some of the work that as you grow the economic muscle, it's really around building an ecosystem. And I think everyone has a place in the ecosystem. I love a panel like this because you have to get small businesses to be big businesses. And it's that lens that we've got to focus on. But there's very often very few impact bonds or rewards to drive that transformation.
Thank you very much, Steve. David, do you want to chip in on that?
I can. Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I honor the audience for taking time to join. The session was during lunch hour, so I hope you are not part of the group Mark was saying are starving. But really thank you, and it's an honor to participate in this. I think for what we see at Sote Hub, so we work with farmers. Over the last 3-4 years, about 15,000 farmers. So in three value chains. So there's the mangoes, there's the cashew, and then there's the yellow passion fruits. And there's a lot of lessons which I will say we have learned. But I tend to have a view of stepping back a little bit and interrogating the role of government in getting some of the basics right. Because one of the fundamental things that we see happening a lot is our agriculture has regenerated. I mean, it's not as it used to be, let's say in the 80s or in the 70s. I give an example, for example, one crop, cashew nut. In 70s, 80s, Kenya and Tanzania were at par. Today, Kenya is doing 10,000 metric ton, Tanzania is doing 250,000. So there must be something that Tanzania has done better. And then if you go to other value chains, for example, coffee and the rest, and even the staple like maize, Kenya is importing, you know. And so when we are at the local level, you see basic things, for example, extension support. It's almost non-existent. I mean, for a farmer to get up-to-date information, they must hire an agronomist. And then accessing fertilizer, accessing inputs. And they are struggling also with the issues of climate. I'll talk about that. And just a few months back, I think it was last month, we had floods, which could be an opportunity to maybe tap into that excess water and irrigation. And I know maybe in a few months to come, we'll have drought. And maybe we might be calling for National Prayer Day because now we cannot deal with food security. So I think they're just basic things that need to be there, and then agriculture become less risky. I mean, if you need lights in this room, you need bring an electrician and wire it and then have a switch somewhere and the lights will be there. And so certain things, as much as we discuss it, government has to step in that role. And then, because I saw, for example, when we were working with our intervention with mango and cashew farmers, our intervention was in how do we get input, how do we get service providers? For example, we brought in insurance, we brought in banks, we brought in extension support. Last year, I think one of the success stories is that some farmer groups got up to 50 million Kenya shillings from credit, and because the banks were guaranteed that there's an insurance and that there's an off-taker already signed into the scheme, so this helps basically to give that security for the bank. But so if we get that right, then maybe now we can also start looking at subsidies as a way, and then also now we can have the aspect of private finance. I think agriculture is one of the least funded, I think, maybe about less than 4% in terms of the loan portfolio. And so how do we attract VCs, angel networks? Some of the startups are here, and I'm sure they'll be able to share the story, but I think these are the discussions that we can have.
Perfect, thank you. I really want to get some of these solutions on stage and to speak to these exact points. We have case-in-point examples of these innovations at play. So I'm going to ask one question that might be the perfect segue, and I would love if each one of you could give a response to this before we welcome our startups. So the question is to do with township or slum economies, right? This is sort of where the poorest urban dwellers would concentrate and live together in our respective countries where we come from. Let us know, please, how your organization or the company where you work would approach rolling out your services, your product, or your expertise within these contexts. Can you just let us know, maybe within 1 minute or 30 seconds, one example or one way in which you directly look into these communities to deploy your resources? We'll start with Mohan.
Well, maybe let me give two different types of examples. As I said earlier, our focus is around infrastructure. So as an example, one element, if you look at South Africa, and given the way that the townships in South Africa were set up versus where there were business and work opportunities, it's quite far distances. So much so that you can have, people that are in more informal types of labor who could spend a significant portion of their daily income just on transport. It's not unusual for somebody to spend 20, 30%, 40% of their income in some cases just taking multiple taxis from the township they're in into the city center, another taxi to where they need to go. So it also takes up a significant amount of time, hour and a half, 2 hours each way as well. So one of the areas we've been investing is around improving urban mass transit, right? And so by connecting people and bringing down both the cost and the time, what it does is it allows people to access work and education opportunities at lower costs. And in that way, we believe we're just promoting the economy and giving people access to employment. That's at a more of a macro level solution. At a more micro level solution, what we found is we're not particularly good at doing small scale investments. Typically, the type of investment we make in dollar terms is from around $10 million going up to a couple of $100 million in size. So what we did was we provided funding to an entity called the National Empowerment Fund in South Africa that does provide small-scale funding to entrepreneurs, including entrepreneurs in townships. And by providing them with a fund in the range of 250 to 300 million rand, so about $15 million, we're hoping to be able to reach a number of entrepreneurs that would be difficult for us to do given the way that we as DBSA are set up.
David?
I think what I could, especially I'll focus on a sector that now we've become very, maybe kind of experts in, which is, well, it's kind of also still in the agro space, but blue economy, which is an area that has not been very well utilized. It's kind of, the pipeline is still very nascent. And our intervention is to work with people in the fish and fish value chain, in the aquaculture, in the conservation, for example, in the blue carbon space, into the seaweeds. There's also groups doing seaweed value addition. And so our intervention in that space has been to develop the businesses, link them to market. We even try and support those that are interested in export market. For example, last year we took 7 entrepreneurs to Germany, and they were able to link up with processors and exporters. And 2 things that we also do is every year we hold an annual summit. We call it Blue Economy Summit. So I want to welcome all of us here. It will be in October in Mombasa. And we give an opportunity to the entire ecosystem, government, private sector, the startups, to showcase, and an opportunity also to meet with investors. The second aspect also is we'll be hosting Blue Invest, which is again a matchmaking, and this is happening in July in Diani, which is in, you're familiar with Diani, Mark? So again, we have a group of investors that we'll be meeting with African startups. So I think if we avail these platforms and opportunities, then we start taking the conversation forward. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ndeko.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll come in from two perspectives. One, under the nature market space, and interesting that one of our partners that we work with very closely within the biocredit space is actually exploring an opportunity to do something within Nairobi, so have urban biocredits within Nairobi, and potentially those could spread within the informal settlements. So that could be one. It's still very new, so I will not divulge all the details here, but that could be an opportunity to bring in those investors who are at the base of the pyramid. And then quite similar to David, we do have under our nature investment two particular initiatives that perhaps would be of benefit. One, which we call the Nature Investor Circle, bringing together investors to network, share opportunities, share knowledge, and then we are setting up what we are calling a catalytic investment facility / fund. We just went through the process of selecting our first round of businesses that would like to pump some resources into. And so I'll definitely share more details with Mark, targeting specifically high impact scalable business opportunities that have direct linkages with nature positive outcomes.
Amazing. Steve, you know what? Can I ask that you save your answer, because you are going to present in the showcase, and I would love us to just stay ahead of time here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank these panelists, and don't feel like you have to lose touch with them, okay? Do get in touch with them. They're very open and kind people. I'm sure they'd love to exchange contact information as well. So can you just join me in thanking them, please? You guys could actually go and take your seats. So, we're going to progress into a sprint round robin here, where we've got 5 ventures that fit the bill in the conversation we've been having today. And we're going to hear from them. Reminder that we have QR codes. Sorry, tech team. I'm having an issue with the clicker. Aha. Thank you very much. So we have a QR code over here. And if you guys go ahead and scan that, then you will go straight into a data room that has uploads by the various presenters who are about to come up. Presenters, your task is simple. 3 to 5 minutes. Let's keep it closer to 3. The idea is to entice your audience to go ahead and check out your folder in our data room. This is your opportunity to demonstrate the kind of innovation that can occur in this particular sector, creating value, and also having that sort of triple bottom line, being ultra sustainable. So our first presenter is going to be a virtual intervention by Dr. Dennis Pastori. Is Dr. Dennis Pastori with us? Can we hear him in the call? Super. Hi, Dr. Dennis.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Why don't you go ahead? You can introduce yourself very quickly. You've got 3 minutes. You can share your slides. It looks like we cannot see our... We do have your slides in our presentation. Is it possible to have them up? We can? Okay, they're working on it. He can share. You have permission, Dr. Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So my name is David. So really, the founder. harvesting what are due, very simple than the drop. So this is what with Vision 20, I was wanted to be talking on with Mark, and it's an amazing work there. So today I'll just talk shortly about what the CDFGS or the Data Trust Theories, that is looking at real-time policy and science. So we talk about the food value chain. With all the sources, this is how we are looking at it. And this is kind of a framework of marketing, the policy in which we want to put all together. When you look here at the diagram of one which goes through the pre-production and into the market. Now, in there, the challenges that we see in the panel, the value chain efficiencies, ranging all the way from the science about machinery. How do you capture that? And how do you target those specific solutions for it? This is a public proposition. We come up with this after reading this basically data-driven assessment tool, where for now we're looking at a few lot cases we're going to go into good events and productivity. And why we're doing this, eventually we want to have those solutions to look at number 4, the deep solution. So all the advisors, market, the finance countries, where they need to target. And so we're looking at investors who need to have these tools and know this is where we need to invest in. Now, to make it
You are running out of time, Dr. Dennis.
okay, shoot, sorry. So let me just wrap up. Yeah, so this is operating. What you see here, kind of visualization as you see here, broken down into components of which we showcase the value chain efficiency index for the market like Sub-Sahara, where you can see and tell where the inefficiencies are. And that also is accompanied with the value and postal market index for specific region, and we're talking maize, we're looking at those major crops, and the inefficiencies we're looking at that the food loss and the stability there. Now with that, we're trying to say that we eventually can capture and tell where to invest. So within those 4 chains, the value chain, we're looking at which are after the finance is, the storage, facility, efficiencies are. And now when you mark out all these storage indexes, now it gives the time and for the startups, the investors, there's no way exactly to link their resources, and eventually you want to break and hold that gap for the food loss, of course, the top, we agree to value chain within the department.
Thank you. Super. Thank you, Dr. Dennis. You are welcome to clap for him. Thanks. Amazing. Dr. Dennis is our CTO and currently in Tokyo, Japan, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see who our next presenter is. Bye, Dr. Dennis.
Bye. Thank you.
Steve Carver.
Thanks very much. This one's working.
Here's a clicker.
That's all right, you can click. I'll go fast. In fact, you'll have to rugby tackle me off because I'm so passionate about livelihoods and Africa and what's happening. So just answering the question, we started a business a number of years ago. My background was launching the Branson School for Entrepreneurship. I started the first free university that was green with a concept called education that pays for itself. So we ran it totally for free, no state funding, no parent funding, by running it rather like kibbutzes. And we looked at rural green education. And I paid the professors on the profits of the student-run businesses. And so we then realized that these small hubs, the minute you start with agriculture, and we then built an app for a number of sort of 9 African countries, and we created an app called Earn As You Grow, and we micro-financed small-scale farmers in supply chains. And then we got asked by most of the food businesses to say, can we aggregate on 4 different pillars? literally climate change risk, and how does African food businesses look at localizing and stopping the imports from China, India, Ukraine, and how do we de-dollarize? And so we could only use technology, and so we started to use technology, and we grew small-scale farmers, and there is a romance with small-scale farmers. Let me start here, because when you talk to small-scale farmers, they all want to grow up and be big farmers. And so there is amazing talent in growing, and specifically this shift in regenerative agriculture and a lot of what we have in Africa. And can Africa feed Africa, and can Africa feed the world? The answer is yes. We have the talent, and we'll only get the money when we start to realize that there are different levels of agriculture that need different forms of funding. And so we then started to realize we could actually build not just agripreneurs. With the step-up common sense, we got asked to do wastepreneurs. Then we got into townships, and they said, can we solve through business innovation water entrepreneurs? We've got toilet entrepreneurs. We've got water cleaning entrepreneurs. We've got food entrepreneurs. We've got digital entrepreneurs using AI to solve issues. And so we built about 380 micro franchises. All of them started what we call alchemy. And we learned with technology that we have to start to find where is the natural talent of young Africans. And we used dating algorithms, if any of you have ever been on Tinder or any dating intelligence, and we realized that very often in South Africa we have a moral compass challenge. There is so much unemployment, young people lie on their CVs to get any opportunity they can. And so we started to realize there's huge trauma, there's despair, people are put into call centers they should never go into, and we built a mechanism that allows us to do an entire psychometric, and then all you will ever see is what you're passionate and good at, rather than what you're terrible at, you don't enjoy doing, etc. And we started to build a system of what we called an impact league. We have incredible organizations that look at how do they look at their supply chains for factories, but how do they commit to 1 million new livelihoods in South Africa and Southern Africa, and how do they do that in go-to-market strategies as well? And so it's not government, but business-led disruption in the slum economies and in township economies that we're now scaling, and we're learning through scars, through all sorts of things, that in fact COVID taught us a massive lesson. Is when we talk community, very often it's a political thing, but when you talk families, and if you want a family to get out of poverty, we need to build livelihoods, resilience. There is a mix of solutions that get families out of poverty, and literally the minute we've started right funding systems, we can change that. And so we now know the coaching and mentoring, we now know the different livelihoods and micro businesses that suit the natural talent of those people, rather than pushing them into the kind of numbers that we thought were the right numbers. And so we use technology, we use innovation, and then we find innovation everywhere. And in fact, in every single slum, there are people with iPhones and Cavelli $1,000 shoes. And all you have to do is ask them how they're winning in their own community, and they share those solutions with us. And so we've been able to use technology, scale that, and now we're ready to really launch.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Steve. Next up, we have another virtual intervention. There will be 2 more after this one, and we will conclude. Is Ahmad with us?
Yes, Mark. Hey, everyone.
Hi. I have your slides here if you would... perfect. There you are.
Okay, confirm that you can see it.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Maybe the tech team can expand you then.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First, let me start by saying that you can't change what you can't measure. We are Renato Space, the winner of Africa's Best Space Innovation Company, and other competitions where we accumulated loads of AWS credits, signed MOU with the government. By telling you about Peter, a farmer from Zambia. This is Peter, and Peter has been suffering from low yields for the past 5 years. His problem, like the other 4 million farmers in Zambia, is his inability to access essential data about his own field. Peter heard about satellite technology from Joe, who hired a team of experts to solve his problems, including a satellite tech expert, a soil expert, an agronomist who analyzes the data, giving Joe constant updates about his crop and his soil composition. But Peter, like most rural farmers, can't afford the experts, and he isn't tech savvy. He doesn't even own a smartphone. We are a resource-rich country here in Zambia, with millions of hectares of arable land and a beautiful weather. Yet, our yields seem to fall behind compared to other countries, making us lose on 70% of potential revenue, translating to millions of dollars lost every year. We just seem not to get it right down here on Earth, and that's why we look up there to the sky. Renato Space is developing Ignite AI, which is Peter's new team of experts. Ignite AI is an artificial intelligence platform that aggregates satellite data from hundreds of different satellite providers, analyze the data using proprietary research, and then give recommendation to Peter with just a click of a button. All he needs to do is sign up to the platform through his farming support program. Go to his farm and click on that button. The platform will triangulate him and give him his soil composition, fertilizer recommendation, and guide him to what to plant, where, and when. But remember, Peter doesn't even have a smartphone. Well, Ignite AI works on any platform, including phones without internet, through the USSD platform, to provide the same life-changing magic that our web platform provides. Our clients range from farmers to governments to NGOs to even other space companies, tapping into 400 million farmers in Africa, starting from the 4.5 million that we have here in Zambia, and that we have access to through our NGOs. Space is about collaboration and not competition. We have received validation from key players on the market about our unique solution, and we are currently working on getting patented. Most remote sensing companies provide complex data that needs a team of experts to decipher. New remote sensing companies are building exciting dashboards for data visualization. But Renato is ahead of the competition by being the only one so far providing actionable insights based on our proprietary research on the ground and internally developed AI, all while providing the data via USSD that 80% of African farmers don't have access to smartphones.
Your closing remarks, Ahmad.
2 more minutes, or 1 more minute.
Sure.
All that starts from $10 a month, paid through cooperatives and various funding funds. We also have project-based revenue streams with private and public institutions. Our path to a million farmers is already paid through our corporation. This translates to $10 million a year to reaching an over ROI 14 months. This is us, a strong team from local and international professionals, gurus in space, agriculture, tech, and business. Data is the new oil, and everyone needs it. We've been bootstrapping. The cash injection will accelerate our research and development and get the first space patent registered in Zambia. We're looking for 100,000, which will allow you, through us, to affect millions of lives in the next few months, including Peter. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ahmad.
Thank you.
So Ahmad has dialed in from either Egypt or Zambia. I know he's always in between the two.
Zambia.
You're in Zambia now. Thank you. Next up, we have Sylvia.
I think this is on. Afternoon, everybody. So my name is Sylvia Kuria, a smallholder farmer, organic farmer, and also an entrepreneur from here in Nairobi, Kenya. And most times when people ask me all the time, since you're doing organic, can organic feed the world? And my question is, has conventional fed us? Unfortunately, we've not been fed, but as we've heard from UCAN, Africa can feed itself. But we don't just want to eat food, but we want to eat safe food. When you think about the statistics, we find that 76% of all inputs are actually classified as highly hazardous pesticides, which means the herbicides, the pesticides that are being sprayed on our food are highly hazardous. So basically, most of the food we're eating on the African continent is actually toxic and not good for us at all. And when you think about the statistics of the consumers who are accessing organic produce is only 0.02%. Before 1970, most of Africa was organic. But when the inputs came in, it looked like, then it's much better for you to put in the synthetic inputs to have a better yield. But what has happened is now the safe organic produce is only accessible to 0.02% of the population. And in Kenya, we have the statistics that only 10% of farmers are actually practicing organic, but many of them want to transition but don't have the chance. So, can go on. Sylvia's Basket, how are we dealing with this issue? So I started this company when we moved out to the country and I was growing my own food. And I told myself, if I'm able to grow safe organic produce as a young mother, why can't I be able to make this food accessible to other moms? And now we are working with more than 100 farmers countrywide. We have an aggregation center right out of Nairobi, whereby we are retailing more than 5 tons of organic produce per month. It's very small, but it shows that we are able to actually access some good produce, to more than 200 homes every week. And we normally train more than 1,000 farmers per annum. Farmers want to go sustainable. They want to be able to grow good food that is safe for the populace. And finally, our call to action, for us want to be able to, first, number one, let me go down there. Let's start with advocacy. When I talk about the highly hazardous pesticides, you find that, most of these pesticides are actually banned in Europe and in the US, but are still being used here. So we have to advocate for the ban of double standards. Because why is it? These pesticides are being produced in the West and being consumed in Africa. So basically what that means is that if you're in Europe and you buy conventional produce, your food is way safer than for us here on the African continent. For us, if you buy conventional produce, it's very toxic for you. So we want to be able to advocate and make sure that these pesticides are banned. And number two, we have to stop on the double standards. And then we want to be able to train farmers and build their capacity to transition. Most farmers want to move to more sustainable farming practices, but don't have access to the information. And they also want to know, how do we do it, and are we able to get a market? At Sylvia's Basket, we have created a wonderful market, that we're not able to sustain the market. We never have enough. It's always, the market demand is quite high for safe produce, because safe produce, my friends, is a fundamental human right. Everyone deserves to eat some good food. And then also, the main issue of why farmers are not able to get their produce to the market is mainly logistical. And I'm very happy to see, we have some very good IT solutions that have been shared today. We'll be able to partner with those. But the issue is logistics. How do I get my produce from the farm to the market? That has been one of the biggest challenges, because farmers are being able to produce, but getting to the markets is the biggest one. So let's unite, let's work together. If you want to know more about what we do, I'm still around and we can talk more. But, let's agree that Africa deserves the best. We normally export the best of our produce, but we're left with quite toxic food. But we deserve the best, and let's work together on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Freddie Kuasola.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Freddie Lyle, and I am the Regional Manager for Africa Power and Kuasola. Africa Power is our UK head office, and we operate in Africa through our 2 subsidiaries in Zambia and Uganda, and those subsidiaries are named Kuasola. And I'm very excited today to present to you one new product in our portfolio, named the Ogiga. But before I tell you about that, I'm going to take you through the problem that this product addresses. So the problem still remains with malaria. Its case rates are steadily on the rise post the pandemic, and we've recorded 240 million cases in Africa in 2022, a rise of 5 million cases from the previous year. 95% of all cases in the world still happen in sub-Saharan Africa, and it has a huge economic impact, not only on GDP, but on families who are burdened with high costs of healthcare, also on individuals who miss wages and miss schooling, and also on businesses who can then suffer from lower productivity. Now, whilst existing solutions are out there, they do have some critical failure points. Bed nets are only useful when you're underneath them, and often when it's too hot, they will go unused altogether. Intermittent preventative treatment is useful, but only when you have access regularly to health clinics, which is not always the case. IRS, or indoor residual spraying, is expensive, has severe collateral damage to ecosystems, and its efficacy falls over time. And we have vaccines, which are having strong breakthroughs at the moment, but vaccines do not guarantee 100% protection, are the most expensive of all interventions as well, and require 4 doses. So in answer to these limitations, we've designed a product named the Mozigo, which is a solution to bridge these gaps. The Mozigo, as I'll show you here, is a vector control fan which operates using translucent discs, which is a WHO recommended and approved chemical, which lasts for 30 days apiece each. This fan will protect an entire room of 30 meters squared and is rechargeable via its solar panel, so it can be used on and off grid. We're contending that the Mozigo in large-scale interventions will be the most cost-effective solution to fight malaria, priced at $2.30 per head. And with that strong pricing placement, we're also gathering strong data to back up that this product is an effective and worthy solution to fight malaria. We've ran 2 free flight room testing operations in London laboratories, and that has shown a 90% reduction in bites and mosquitoes' abilities to feed. We've also ran in 2022 a 700-person sample-sized pilot project in Songea, Tanzania, where we recorded a 90% reduction in cases of participants receiving or needing healthcare for malaria. And as we speak currently, we are underway in rolling out a 10,000 unit trial in Uganda with partnership with the Malaria Consortium. Now, the market opportunity for Mozigo is twofold. We have traditional retail, which, to give you some scope, if we were to tap into the existing solar home system market and off-grid energy product market, would be a huge potential for us. So in 2023, 1.79 million appliances, which include water pumps, fridges, and TVs, were sold in Africa in 1 year. Then what we also have here is the government-led and donor-led intervention market. In 2022, the US pledged $5.6 billion to fight malaria globally. And in Zambia this year, they received $28 million to fight malaria. So this market is also a very suitable one for Mozigo, and one we're aiming to tap into with our data. The Africa Power team, the C-suite, has over 75 years of experience in alternative energy and product development. And our Kuasola teams have strong business development arms in both Zambia and Uganda, and have strong existing sales networks for our other products in the Africa Power pipeline. The ask today is twofold. We have asked for the investors amongst you today for $650,000 that will primarily fulfill our sales pipeline and our ability to roll out Mozigo across Africa, as well as expand our R&D of Mozigo into new infectious diseases such as dengue, which affects 34 countries in Africa, so we can really have a product that is suitable for all sorts of healthcare needs. And then secondly, we're looking for businesses and distribution partners across Africa who can help us scale up our operations into the countries highlighted here, but not limited to. And Thank you very much for all of your time today. If you have any questions, it would be a pleasure to answer them after this session, and I'd be happy to show you the Ogiga firsthand. And thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Freddie. So that concludes the actual presentations. We're going to allow 2 more interventions from visitors we have here. As you understand, impact in this sector is multi-industry. It is multifaceted. You can have solutions to do with human capacity development as well as food, as well as nutrition, as well as logistics. And when you come up with these holistic solutions, this is when you can achieve transformation. So we'll allow 2 more interventions. First up is EcoPay.
Did you know that every time you make a payment, digitally or mobile, what actually happens is you're basically sending a text message that, hey, you have received 2,000 from Felix, and Felix gets the same message that, hey, I've sent you 2,000 Kenyan shillings. So basically, that's a huge problem. Is that fundamentally the cost of this transaction is about 33 shillings, and if I did 5 of these transactions in a day, I've lost more than $1. Yet the cost of financing my food for that day was equivalent to this $1 or more. Africa needs the opportunity to be able to send money, make any forms of digital payments. But the cost is very high. So why make this thing very expensive when it's just an SMS that you're sending? So this is how we ended up developing EcoPay. So I was in an hospital, and this is, of all those times, we've been paying insurance. And for the first time, I didn't. I just forgot that, hey, I need to pay for my insurance. So this day, I'm some host in an hospital, and I'm wondering, I'm going to my financial ledger, my M-Pesa, and I noticed that, so over the year, I did about 2 million in transactions. And my transactional cost, do you guys have an idea of how much they were? Quite a lot. Interesting enough is it takes you 3 months of your transaction is enough to pay for your son's or your daughter's school fees in Kenya. So you're wondering, how is it that these transaction costs are very high and yet we need these solutions? So this is how we ended up with EcoPay. EcoPay enables you to make the same transactions and at the same time save 90% of your transactional costs towards a prepayment. Now, I didn't do the slides because I want your attention to me, and the stage is huge, so let's connect. So picture this. If you send 5 transactions in a day, and your average cost of that transaction was about 150 shillings, it means that, and if you did this in a month, it means that in that month you have about 3,000 shillings. What 3,000 shillings can do for Kenyans is this. They can have their gas delivered to them. They can have shopping in terms of voucher. And we're just thinking, why make this market that is so huge, over $1 trillion in terms of capitalization, be just accessible to one player, which is M-Pesa, and we appreciate what they've done before. But think about it. 300 billion in transaction costs as revenue. Why not take 30 billion? This is what basically we are having, and then take the existing 270 billion back to the business ecosystems. So what we're enabling business to do is an opportunity to collect and use this collection to reinvent it back into the inventory. And that is purely what EcoPay is doing. So I'll be glad to listen to your conversation. It's purely as simple as that. I could tell you the whole chain and how it goes and how we're making our money, but I think fundamentally what is very important here is the impact that you're building in Africa is, should my grandmother be able to send money, and as she's sending money, she's actually smiling and not frowning, because when you receive a text message that, hey, you've received this amount of money, there's always a smile, right? Whether you're a business or you're as a person. But when you're the one sending it, it's not necessarily the same case. But because you're thinking about, I've sent this much, and I'm already losing. So let's see how can we help Africa be able to make the same transactions, because the mobile money and the digital payments has about a market of 450 million users. They're unbanked. So think about your fund. your money getting into this? And as I finalize, we're looking to raise about 5.5 million USD to be able to take us into this market. Why this big money is because we're going against a big player. I can give you traction, but my traction won't make much sense if I don't get to the market and capture it completely. Thank you.
Okay, finally, we're going to go into the civil society interventions. We've got Brandon Okothia from Watoto Library. Would you like to take a second to tell us about your operation?
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. My name is Brandon Okoth. I'm from Kibera, Kenya. It's an urban slum, and it's regarded to be Africa's largest slum. And what we do in Kibera is we have set up a space whereby we are providing children with a safe and child-friendly space for them to do their assignments and just providing them access to education, because we have realized that education is a very key tool to changing the community, yet it's not given much attention, because you realize that, in fact, if you go to a public school in Kibera, you find that we have students in a classroom 130, and you find that many of the children go unnoticed. Away from that, we have set up also a sponsorship school that includes junior secondary students aged 13 to 15. And we have identified them from very needy backgrounds and vulnerable backgrounds, and we're providing them with that space, just easy access to quality education. But away from that also, I founded what is called Kibera Local Water Forum that invites volunteers on every Saturday, whereby we invite the women, the children themselves, and the youths of their community, and we give them a space to try and be the solution to the environment. And what we do is we remove the plastics that are filling a section of Nairobi River passing through Kibera. And through that, we are trying to bring, to empower the community with skills, financial skills. We are trying to empower the community with basically skills that can enable them to gain, to have income coming in. And one of the things that we're doing together with Vision 2030 Fund is we're trying to set up a tailoring course, a tailoring whereby the members who are involved with the cleaning can also be they can learn some skills in tailoring and all that, and they can make some income, from making their aprons themselves, from making the school uniform that we need with the children. And basically that's entirely what we are doing in Kibera. So my name is Brandon Okoth from the Watoto Library. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. And I will allow us to conclude the session here. We have gone over time. Apologies. What I will say is this. As a venture capital fund that's joint with an incubation service, what we call an entire entrepreneurial empowerment ecosystem is the kind that specializes in identifying projects just like the ones you've found, ideas just like the ones you've heard, and putting them through a process, the entrepreneurial journey, identifying value opportunities, product market fits, helping them build minimum viable products, become investment ready, bringing them to opportunities just like this to solicit funding and ultimately to invest in them ourselves. If you support the Vision 2030 Fund, you are supporting the cultivation of projects just like the ones you've heard from today. And that would be my one and only call to action for all of you. Learn about us, get in touch with us, empower us, because what we do with the resource is to go on the ground, locate these opportunities, and bring them to fruition. Thank you very much for your time.
can stop.